Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. This is a video that's aimed at Mark Dice. Really quickly, I'm going to prove you wrong about your claim that white people, or most of white people, or all white people in America are magically not holding black people down in any way, shape, or form. Because when you say that, hey, it's outrageous for them to make that claim, it's tantamount to saying that they're not holding them down in any way, shape, or form. So first of all, let's establish figures of speech, right? If someone says, hey, white people are holding black people down, they mean either most white people or a lot of white people or all white people, right? Okay. So we live in a country where even Bernie Sanders, though he may be Jewish or he's Jewish, is like white as an eggshell. He says that corporations run the Democratic Party. Corporations in a country that is about 62% white or so. And the corporations are disproportionately white. All right, black people are 13% of America, or 12% rather, and they have maybe, according to some estimates, 4% of the capital. Therefore, they are not a huge part of the corporate world when it comes to influencing the Republican Party, the Libertarian Party, or the Democratic Party. So you have a mostly white corporate system here in America. And they have the power to shut out foreign influence from the government if they want. You have corporate partnerships, corporate alliances, conglomerates, transnational corporations, what have you. You have two political parties that are largely white, who are run mostly by white people. And they've never effectively put out a plan to end homelessness at least in the last 40, 50 years or so. I say that to keep it very simple. So for all intents and purposes, a mostly white corporate world collaborating with a mostly white-run government with all the parties involved, right? Democrats, libertarians, even independents, right? And Republicans, has not done a good job helping out black people. They've mismanaged the funds. They didn't spend money to effectively audit the government. They didn't end homelessness. They didn't protect Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. But they were very much involved in their killings, weren't they? So now there's an absence of black leaders courtesy of a white government. Granted, they're not completely responsible, right? But they're largely responsible. Courtesy of a white corporate world. They refuse to restructure the school system and be honest about what the IQ test means and doesn't mean and come out with an official stance on it. Because there's more than one form of learning. There's more than one form of intelligence. So they're not honest about that. So when a certain group of people has an oral tradition and they have forms of intelligence relative to being deep and spiritual, understanding nature, naturalist intelligence, spatial intelligence, existential, what have you, and you're downplaying that and saying they're stupid, it has certain psychological effects. And the government could easily rectify the situation. It's a mostly white government, right? So the absence of effective social programs come as a result of a mostly white corporate world and a mostly white government. The absence of honest politicians, again, the result of the iron triangle economics, right? Congress, the bureaucrats, the interest groups, what have you, mostly white. You see, the masses of white people vote left or right. They don't come together to make an honest political party in a country that's mostly white. But you're going to sit there as an extremely disingenuous person with a fairly large following, and you're going to feed into the despicable and contemptible misconception that the masses of white people in America are not holding black people down. When you look at them as a group, then you have all these trolls on the internet, you have all these podcasters. When you look at your argument, it is laughable. No serious academic would take you seriously. Only conservative idiots who seek to conserve a failed system that could easily be corrected with cost-effective spending and wealth taxes, food programs, cost-effective apartments and tiny homes for the homeless, affordable housing, which the government would use as an investment. It wouldn't cost the government anything in the long term. They might even get a return on their investment if they do it correctly. But they refuse to do these things, and they're mostly led by white people. But you're going to sit there in an extreme and toxic state of white denial and swear up and down that that's not the case. You can look at places in the world where they manage black people much more effectively, and a lot of them are in Africa. And you're going to swear up and down that white people do not keep black people down. Why didn't Trump pass an executive order to hire more law enforcement? Why does he use an expensive and political move like the National Guard just in a few places? Why not hire law enforcement in every city that has a problem? Why not allocate $30 billion a year? Why not use wealth taxes? Because when you don't do that, you're holding the black man down. When Congress, which is mostly white, doesn't legislate it themselves, they're holding the black man down. When the Supreme Court says, hey, it's unconstitutional to not respond to this crime epidemic in America because you're unfairly protecting quote-unquote safe white areas that were made that way by a racist white government historically, and you're allowing these dangerous areas that are disproportionately full of minorities, to cause each other harm. And what are you going to do? Cite, to go without enough police officers so that people are harming each other? Are you going to cite white politicians and their token minority allies on the left and say they won't let us do it? When everyone knows they're the shills of a mostly white corporate, state. A state where the members of the corporations are mostly white. Is that your argument? No matter how you slice it, you are greatly mistaken. And white America, on record, logically and irrefutably, holds down black people in America. I know firsthand. I'm the son of 2 doctors, one a brain surgeon. My father's a black person. And we are sabotaged to the extreme, canceled, blacklisted, and both parties won't lift a finger to help us because they follow a racist and mostly white corporate elite and a racist and mostly white government. I rest my case. Okay, so I'm targeted and I get provoked. And I think that my anger is justified, and I think I'm right to release this video. And I'd like to really quickly sum up what I was saying here. My argument, in essence, is this: that governments all throughout history, tribal governments, national governments, you name it, have managed various groups of black people. And America has managed them very poorly over the years. Why is that? There are other governments out there in Africa, what have you, relative to the resources they have. Quite often they manage the black people there a lot more effectively than America, even though it has all kinds of resources, not just money, but all kinds of educational resources to do a much better job than they're doing. So why is that? It's pretty straightforward, right? Think about the resources that they have and don't have. How are they able to manage them better? It's a walk in the park to adjust the taxes in America, have the rich pay maybe 0.5% more taxes, for example, and use it for effective social programs and housing the homeless. Why don't they do that? Where are all the black role models? Why are black people in America incapable of defending themselves from all these attacks on social media? They're not doing a very good job. The white people are supposed to be their allies in the Democratic Party aren't helping them out very much. And they're all just corporate shills, right? They're Freemasons, they work for various corporations, they're bought and paid for by corporate as politicians. Why is that? Why are all these social media sites owned by white people and Jews and LGBT people? They're not owned by black people. So when there's this kind of censorship war going on, and this cancel culture war, it's a bunch of whites and token minorities and Jews on the left, and more racist whites and token minorities and Jews on the right, and they're dominating social media and the corporations, and thus they dominate social life, right? Social clubs, socializing, social life, social media, social engineering, fraternities, and fraternizing. And notice that the black frats in college basically are all whitewashed. Every once in a while there's some criminal black frat in the college. It's a long story for another day, but they're kind of responding to a white racist system. And there's a bunch of whitewashed black fraternities. Thank you.